Hello, this is His Word Unveiled. We are hitting Exodus chapter 32 today. Guys, I'm so stoked about this chapter. It holds so many powerful truths. There's so much goodness in this. So I'm not going to waste any time. Let's jump into this. You do your thing and read Exodus chapter 32. There's so much in it. So slow down. Take your time, you and God, meet with him, be intentional, listen, and just let him speak. Let him unveil whatever it is that he wants to show to you today. Go do that. I'm praying, and we will do what we do and walking this out together. Lord, we thank you for being so faithful, for giving us your word, for reminding us how good you are, for being so faithful and committed to us in everything, in every way that we may fall short, and every way that we just don't get it. Lord, teach us. Teach us the importance of waiting in you, of being so closely connected and knit with you. Lord, show us your heart, teach us your heart, speak your heart to us, and help us to receive it. Help us to just hide it deep within our own hearts. Lord, just speak to us today. We're so excited to learn from you, for you to just be our teacher. Just teach us, lead us. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Exodus chapter 32. Super stoked about this. Okay, we had just finished up talking about just God relaying all of these instructions and how to build the tabernacle and where he's going to meet and dwell among the children of Israel. So we finished up that with the last chapter. Also, and this was all God speaking to Moses, as Moses is still up on Mount Sinai. The Lord called him up, spoke all of these just spoke to him so much instruction, so many commandments. I love at the very end of our last chapter in Exodus 31 and like verse 14 through 17, there is an emphasis on the Sabbath and just resting. And I love that he is speaking this to Moses, and then we see this next chapter, how it just rolls into this significance of the people not resting in who he is and not resting in what the Lord has told them and spoken to them. Just finding that day of rest is so important. So, okay, jumping in to Exodus chapter 32 then. Okay, I'm just going to start reading. Now when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people assembled about Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who will go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So just giving and understanding this laying out of what's going on. Okay, remember, we said the Lord called Moses up to this mountain, this holy mountain that none of the children of Israel were allowed to go to. They weren't even allowed to touch the very bottom, like right where this met, the very foot of the mountain. They were to be even lower. So they could not even step foot on this mountain. The Lord calls Moses up, and Moses is up there for 40 days and 40 nights. That is a long time. And the people knew why Moses was going up. They knew that Moses, they saw and heard God speak, and his thundering voice and this lightning and the smoke just bellowing off of this mountain. They knew that the presence of God was so thick and so heavy on Mount Sinai, on this mountain. And the Lord called Moses up into the midst of this thickness of the smoke and where God is. They knew this. They knew that Moses was going up to meet with the Lord. They knew that God was going to relay just commandments and speaking these instructions to Moses. That Moses was going to have this encounter, the Lord was going to speak, and that Moses would come down from the mountain and tell them everything. All of his experiences, all of those moments, all of the ways that God spoke to him and encountered him and unveiled things to him while he was up on the mountain. That they were down here where they were camped and settled, waiting for Moses to come down and share with them all that God spoke, all that God is calling them into. I mean, this was like the people were just waiting on these mysteries to be unveiled, waiting to hear from a holy God who loved them, who chose them, who was leading them. This was huge. And the people, they waited for a day. They waited for 2, 3, 4. And time, they waited a week. They waited a couple weeks. They waited a month. They were on 40 days. Moses was up there 40 days and 40 nights. And we saw in these first 2 chapters, it says they saw that Moses delayed to come. So they saw, hey, days and days are coming. We have no clue when he's coming down. We don't even know if he's going to come down. And they were getting impatient. They were getting super anxious and like, okay, is he going to come down? Are we ever going to hear from the Lord? Are we ever going to know what we're to do? Are we ever going to have something to worship? Are we ever going to feel the presence of God? Is this ever going to come to be? Is this ever going to happen? Are we ever going to have something that's going to lead us? Are we ever going to have this God who says that he's making a covenant with us that's going to lead us into our promised land? The one that said he's pulling us up from Egypt to take us to this land flowing with milk and honey. Like, where is this God? And we're never going to hear from him if Moses doesn't come down. And so they start justifying all of this. They start justifying their impatience and their need to feel. Guys, when I read this chapter, this stuck so strongly to me. And how many of us are doing life with God? And we want so much of God, but we just feel like we keep hitting a brick wall, that we're not getting any deeper, that we can't feel the presence of God. And there's our problem right there. And in wanting so desperately to feel the presence of God, where we lay this out, where we put so much dependence upon the realness and the power of the presence of God, we place our dependence upon this understanding of this realness on how we feel the presence of God. We put so much emphasis on, I want to feel the presence of God. I want to feel that I'm right with the Lord. I want to feel connected to God. Guys, there are times when we won't feel that God is right here with us. There's going to be times where we feel like God is distant. But what we need to do, what the Lord wants from us, is to not base truth upon our feelings, on what we feel, and feeling connected or not. We know in our heart. It has nothing to do with feel. I feel tired. Okay, well, you know what? The Lord still wants to speak. I feel that this person is mad. Okay, well, what's your responsibility? What's really going on? What can you do? What can you do about it? What's God calling you to do about it? Our feelings, we put so much of an emphasis on our feelings. We need to get off of I feel so much of God and get on with it doesn't matter what I feel. I know that God is good. It doesn't matter what I see. I know that God is working and moving because he promises to do that. He promises to start a work in us and to not finish until the day that he returns. He promises these things. He tells us who he is. He gives us a word and he places in our heart. It doesn't matter if we feel it or not. What matters is that he is who he says he is. He is God. He is faithful. He is moving. He is working. He is fighting for us. He does love us. That's what we need to focus on is this. We have this desperation to feel. And unless we feel, nothing's real. Unless we feel, then we can't move on. Unless we feel in the mood to read the word, then we shouldn't read it. Because if we don't feel it, then we're not in it for the right reasons. Guys, we have to get past that. We have to get past that lie. We cannot base our relationship on the Lord on the way that we feel. Oh, we're tired, so I need to rest. Oh, I feel just really confused, so I just need to sit here in my confusion. Oh, I don't really feel like I, again, want to read the word. Get past your feelings. Deny your emotions and your feelings any power. Deny them any power to dictate the things that you do and the way that you pursue God and the way that you praise him. Don't let circumstances dictate that. We don't have to feel the presence of God to know that the presence is right here. His presence is right here, available, accessible, ready to be poured out into our lives. That we just need to keep praising him, and we need to keep speaking truth. We need to keep speaking his word, his truth that he gives us, speaking those things. And the more and more we speak and take step by step forward into what we know, no matter how we feel, then those feelings are going to be lined up. We're going to be aligned. Our feelings and what we say that we know, it's going to match up. But if we sit around and wait for our feelings to change, wait for our feelings to match up with truth, guys, we're going to be sitting there for a very long time. We're going to be confused. We're going to be frustrated. We're going to get tired, exhausted, because we're just going to spin our wheels, because feelings will always come in. Feelings will always rise up. There's going to be moments when we feel angry, but what are we going to do about that feeling? There's going to be moments where we feel depressed. What are we going to do about that feeling? How are we going to take it and give it to the Lord? How are we going to deal with it? Are we going to sit and sulk, or are we going to praise the Lord? Are we going to focus on his goodness? Are we going to focus on who he is, on who his word says he is, even when we don't feel it? Even when we don't feel like God is good because we can't understand why all this stuff is happening, are we going to stand in position and say, God, you are good. You are good. Reading your word, we see that you are good. You speak that you are good. You are good. That's who you are. You are full of goodness. And when we speak that and when we choose to walk in that, we will see. We will see a change in us because it's in his presence. When we choose to be in his presence, then things change. Our emotions change. The fear that we feel, it has to bow because nothing can stand in the presence of God. But it's if we are seeking the Lord and going off of what we know and not what we feel. We can't be so desperate to feel the presence of God that we can't move until we feel the presence. Until we feel the presence, we can't move on. We're right here. And as soon as God just pours out and as soon as we feel his presence, then we'll move on. Then we'll start reading more. Then we'll do all of these things. No, we do them. We move. We move in the understanding that God is God and that God is good. We move in that. And when we move in that, move into and deeper into his presence, that's when things change. That's when our feelings start lining up with that movement, with that trust, with moving in faith into who he is. That's where it's at. So we see the children of Israel are getting impatient, that they feel like they have to have a presence before them. They have to have something tangible that they can worship, that they can see, that they know they're being led. They want to feel something. They want to feel something tangible. And this desperation to feel God's presence instead of standing on what we know, we see in chapter 32 that drives us into idolatry. It drives us into creating something that we can hold on to. It drives us into manipulating situations, into creating for ourselves something that we can worship, something that we can feel good from, something that we can shape change our, manipulate our emotions into thinking we're good, and to thinking we're happy. It's that pursuit of happiness instead of the understanding that we have joy, that joy comes from the Lord, and ultimately covers our life with this happiness and seeing God for who he is. But we see that the children of Israel were so desperate to have something that they could see before them, that they weren't willing to put faith into the unseen, into what God has spoken, into what God even has already done. They've even seen it, but they're desperate for something tangible to worship. And so they say, we don't know when Moses is coming down. We don't know if we're going to be told what God is speaking and his instructions. We need something to worship. We don't even know if we're going to even have an encounter with the presence of God by hearing what Moses encountered. So let's come up with something. Make us something, Aaron. Aaron, make us something that we can worship so that we can be happy and we can be full of just celebrating what the Lord, what the Lord wants to do and how all this will come about, that we can come together and celebrate and have this big feast, because we need a presence. We need something to worship. We need something to go on. It's like they were getting bored and they weren't willing to wait. When that waiting period would end the very next day. So they say, Aaron, make us a God. Make us a God, because we don't know what's going to happen with Moses, but we're tired of waiting. We want something to worship. We want something to feel and to give us the sense of happiness and the sense of purpose. We want to create something that will give us this. So Aaron says, tear off your gold rings, of all of your wives, your sons, your daughters, give them to me. They tore them off. They gave them to him. He shaped them. It says that he fashioned them. We see in verse 4. Fashioned it with a graving tool and made it into a molten calf. And then the children of Israel start yelling out, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. So they are worshiping this calf. This is something that they can just jump into, they can dive into, and let's celebrate. Let's worship the Lord through this God, and let's make this for ourselves, since we don't know what's going to happen with Moses and him letting us know. So let's jump into this worshiping and what we're made for. Then it says, once the people started yelling, then Aaron built an altar, and he says, tomorrow we are partying it up. And that's exactly what they did. In verse 6, we see the next day they rose early. They offered burnt offerings on this altar before this gold calf, brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. Oh my goodness. These are the people who just made a commitment to the Lord when Moses said, here's what the Lord's saying. You know, they heard the Lord speaking it when that mountain was covered in smoke, bellowing with smoke, thunder and lightning when the Lord was speaking to them. And Moses said, this is what the Lord commanded you, that you obey him, and then blessings will be poured out. And just a few chapters ago, we read this where the people were like, yes, we're going to do everything the Lord said. Yes, let's move into this. This sounds great. This sounds wonderful. Let's do this. And now we see that they have already given into and worshiping, making a god for themselves and bowing down and worshiping it. And now they're eating and drinking and just rising up and playing. They're just having this feast. And the Lord, we see in verse 7, he told Moses, you need to go down at once. For the people who you brought up from the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. And he is very clear in saying they have quickly turned aside. They took this, they fashioned this calf, and they are worshiping it. They are bowing down to it. They have corrupted themselves. And we see this. I mean, God says they quickly turned aside, going back to what they just committed. How often do we speak with our mouths? Yes, God, let's do this. I'm ready. You know, I'm going to do this. I'm going to change this behavior. I'm going to do better at this. I'm going to correct this. I'm going to, all this stuff. Yes, we love the Lord. We're going to church. We trust the Lord. We're Christians. Yes, we believe. All of this where we're speaking all these commitments, yet we have yet to make this commitment in our heart. Until we decide in our heart what we want and we really weigh out the life that we want, what we really believe, what we're willing to give up to receive, to have, in responding in faith. Before we make a heart commitment, we are so quick to speaking with our mouths and speaking all of these commitments. And when we speak and speak and speak, and there's nothing in our heart, there is nothing with this commitment that we've made with the Lord and really weighing out what we want, there's nothing. It's all done in vain. But how quickly are we to speak? And when we speak those things and we don't follow through, people see, and that ends up hurting them. That ends up being destructive for them and for their life and for their commitments. What we speak, we need to make sure our mouths are shut and we're not so quick to speak until we have evaluated and made those authentic commitments in our heart and weighing it out. I remember the Lord coming to me at my lowest point where he said, do you want to live a life of suffering? Do you want to stay stuck in this suffering? Do you want to live here and remain in suffering? Or do you want to live a life for me? It's that weighing out, being real in what we want, and being real in what we're choosing to give up, or what we're choosing to change, what we're choosing to do and to walk into. What do we really want? Do we want a life of this, or do we want a life with the Lord? So before we speak and say, yes, we're willing to live for the Lord and we're going to change and we're going to do all this, before that, we need to sit back and think, what do we really want? What do we really believe? How much are we willing to give up before we speak so quickly? And then, like in verse 8, quickly turn aside from what we speak. We have to make it real for it to stick. There's nothing real in just speaking things. That authenticity, that being transparent, that real profound power of transformation in our lives comes from seeking the Lord, comes from being found in him before we speak all of these things, before we speak these commitments. That heart commitment and being connected to his heart needs to take place before we're willing to go around and speak what we want in life and what we're doing and what we're going to change. You make sure that it's real. You make sure that you've encountered the Lord before you speak that. So the Lord says, go down, Moses. They're doing this horrible thing. They're corrupting themselves. And then he says, in verse 10, now then, let me alone that my anger may burn against the people, that I may destroy them. So he's saying, I'm done with them. They are obstinate. They're stubborn. They're speaking one thing and living another. I'm done with them. I'm not continuing this. And then Moses comes in and he speaks. He says, entreated the Lord his God, it says, O Lord, why does your anger burn against your people, whom you've brought up from Egypt? You have done all these great things, and you have placed a blessing on them. You have made a covenant with them. And verse 13, remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, who you swore and said to them, I will multiply your descendants. I will, as the stars of heaven, I will multiply them, and all this land that he will bring them into the land. He is speaking these words. Guys, do we know the Lord enough? Have we heard him clearly enough to be able to say, God, you said this. You spoke this. No matter what I feel, you said this. No matter what I see going on in my life right now, you've spoken this. This is who you are. You are the God who you say you are, and this is what you did for your people, and this is what you are committed to do for me. You've promised to never leave me. No matter what I feel right now, no matter what's going on, this is what you've spoken. This is who you are. This is the God that I know you are. Do we know him well enough to speak with the authority and boldness to come before him and say, you said this, God. You said this, so I know this will happen. No matter what I see, I'm standing on the unseen, and I'm standing on the unknown. I'm standing on what you've promised. Whether it happens right in this moment, whether it happens the next day, whether it happens the next year or 10 years from now, this is what you've spoken, and standing on that. And Moses did stand on that. In verse 14 it says, so the Lord changed his mind about the harm which he said he would do to his people. Then it says Moses turned and went down to the mountain with the 2 tablets in his hand. In verse 16 we see the tablets were God's work. The writing was God's writing engraved on the tablet. So by God's fingerprints, by his hand, he wrote out these commandments. Moses is going down the mountain holding on to these precious pieces of what God himself wrote on with his handwriting. He sees Joshua, and Joshua says, I hear the sound of the people. It says war, but it's not a cry of triumph. It's not a cry of defeat, but it's sound of singing I hear. So they're hearing this. He's relaying this to Joseph, and then Moses comes up on the people. Moses came near the camp. We see this in verse 19, that he saw the calf and the dancing. And Moses' anger burned, and he threw the tablets from his hand and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf and he burned it. Then we see Moses approaching Aaron, and he says, what did this people do to you that you have brought such great sin upon them? Aaron said, do not let the anger of my Lord burn. You know the people yourself, that they are prone to evil. For they said to me, make a god for us, who we go before. For this Moses, the man who brought us up from the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. I said to them, whoever has any gold, let them tear it off. So they gave it to them, and I threw it in the fire, and out came this calf. Wow, just the excuses that Aaron is saying. Don't be mad. You know that they're prone to evil. You know that they do wicked things. And I just simply asked for this gold that they had and threw it in the fire, and out came this calf. It just appeared. When we know what Aaron did, that he fashioned this into a calf because of the people. But what I want to hit on is verse 21, when Moses says to Aaron, what did this people do to you that you have brought such great sin upon them? This is such a profound parenting moment for others, and even people in the midst of peer pressure, when people want us to do things or join them in things, or even as simple as gossiping and how we handle that, or saying something that's not funny, that may be inappropriate, that we're laughing at anything. But it hits me with a profound parenting lesson just on disciplining when we want our kids to be happy. And we don't want them to be sad. We don't want them to get angry. We don't want them to grumble. But how are we disciplining? Are we being firm? And what's our perspective on discipline? You know, Moses says, what did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin on them? You know, this isn't about what the people made him do. It's what Aaron did to them by giving in to them. By giving into this peer pressure, by giving into them wanting an idol, instead of Aaron speaking up and saying, this isn't right, this is what the Lord said, we need to wait on him and trust him, and he spoke this clearly, not to make, you know, any images, to worship any other gods. Instead of that, Aaron gave in. He chose not to discipline, not to reprove, not to speak in truth, not to stand up for what's right. And because he did that, he brought sin upon them. He brought punishment on them. It's not about the people, the peer pressure. You know, we're so quick to saying, oh, we were peer pressured into doing that. Or, oh, my kids gave me their puppy dog eyes and I gave in. No, discipline brings people into righteousness and just reproving and standing up for what's right and speaking, no matter how bad our kids want it, and giving that discipline and saying, no, this is not right. This is why we don't do this. This is why this is not okay. This is what the word says. When we relay that, we save them. We spare them from punishment. We save them, spare them from difficulties later on in life if they continue on in these behaviors. It's what Aaron did. By not speaking the truth, by not reproving what they were doing and explaining to them, no, this is who God is and this is what he expects from us. By not doing that, he put on this punishment on the people, that he did that to them. He can't play victim and saying, oh, the people made me do it. The people made me sin. this person made me do this. This person made me get angry. This person made me respond this way. We can't do that. It's up to us to speak truth, to respond in truth, to live and walk in truth in everything we do, and to not back down and let people continue in their sin and not allow people to drag us into their sin. But we need to speak up, take a stand, speak the truth of what God has spoken, not only for ourselves, but for them, that we bring them up out of all of that filth, all of that sin, that we speak truth and allow them to be saved while they're at it. But because Aaron did that, there was a punishment, and they had gathered the people, and they were instructed to go out and take their swords and kill brothers and sons and close relatives, these people who were a part of this worshiping of this idol, that be removed, that be destroyed, because the Lord spoke that all of these idol worshipings, their gods, their sacred pillars, tear down, destruct them. We saw that earlier in Exodus, that's what God commanded. And now even in the midst of the children of Israel and what they're doing, they've created this God. They have made this altar, this sacred pillar, for this molten calf. And so they were instructed to do the same, because that was God's commandments. And he doesn't veer off of what he has commanded, what he instructs us to do. And so they were instructed to go and kill, destroy, remove this evil from among their midst, so that blessing could be. It says in verse 29, in order that he may bestow a blessing upon you today. So we see this punishment coming on. Consequences are just as for real, just as powerful as the blessings that God says we will have through obedience and through following him. So we see even in verse 35, then the Lord smote the people because of what they did with the calf which Aaron had made. Yes, okay. And we see even in verse 32 and 33 this emphasis on whoever, the Lord said to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out of my book. So it's each individual person being responsible for what they're doing, for how they're handling things, for what they're seeking, for how much they're willing to wait on the Lord, how much trust and faith they're willing to walk out in, and to stand on what they know, what they've heard, what the Lord has told them, instead of being so desperate to have something tangible to have and to just feel good. Guys, we're not created to just feel good about ourselves by doing all these good things and worshiping something and being happy and full of happiness. That's not why we were created. We weren't created to feel a holy God. We were created to know a holy God. And in that knowing him and deepening our relationship with him, then the feelings of his presence, then the feelings of peace and joy come. But until we're willing to stand on that in faith and stand and know, to be still and know that he is God, until we're willing to do that, then the feelings that we receive are just going to be superficial, temporary, full of confusion, discouragement, because we base all of reality and all of who God is and his power on just the way we feel. And we miss out on everything, the abundance of his blessing and what's authentic and powerful and real for what God has for us. So may we stand against our emotions, stand on knowing God, entering into why we were created. Our purpose is to know and to be in relationship with a holy God. And by standing and moving in his presence, standing on his word, then those feelings will come. And when they come, you can be assured that they are real, that they are permanent, that they are set and established by a holy God. That there's nothing fake, there's nothing that we have manipulated or created ourselves or faked out and believing, hey, this is real, this is how I feel, this is what I want. No. Everything we encounter in the presence of God is real and lasting and just empowering and beautiful. So that's that. There was so much in that. I encourage you to just go through that chapter again. There's so much more. Let God meet personally with you more and more, not just in that moment before in your reading. Let him continue in growing and developing and giving you new, fresh perspectives on just who he is, on his word, on his love for you, on how powerful his presence is, even in those moments where we feel tired and off and everything else. God doesn't change. He is who he is always, no matter what we feel. So let's just jump in, dive into his presence, and let him let him take us wherever he wants to take us in all areas and all things. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for walking this out with me. I'm so excited for all that God has for us and continuing this journey through his Word Unveiled. So I hope to see you very soon.